Talk of the Bay on K-Squid KSQD Santa Cruz. I'm your host, Rachel Ann Goodman, and it is election season. Nothing gets people's attention more than local ordinances, and there's always some each year that catch everybody's attention. Last time it was the rail trail that had everybody talking, and it went down, Measure D, in flames. You never know how it's going to go, though, these hotly contested races. And the one we're going to talk about with pro and con today is Measure O. And I'm going to read what Measure O says on the ballot. And then we're going to hear from two people on both sides who are both people I respect highly and are good friends of mine, Lisa Ekstrom and Don Lane. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons of Measure O. If you're a voter out in the county, you can only watch with amused apprehension or anything in that range. But it does affect you in the sense that it does concern the downtown library, which if you're like me and you live out in the county, there's no library out there. So this is the one you use. So it does affect you. Or if you're like me and you live in a rural area and you come to Santa Cruz, the things happen here affect you too. So I hope you'll find this interesting. This next hour we're devoting, we will be taking your input on text. So if you'd like to text your questions, we'll take those as the show goes on. I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. And the way to do that is text, not call, 900-5773, and that's in the 831 area code. But wait till the show's underway, so you might want to respond to what is being said. So here's what the ballot says. A yes on O vote supports amending the general plan and downtown plan to 1. Prohibit construction of the proposed downtown library and affordable housing project and relocation of the downtown farmers market. 2. Require development of affordable housing on certain downtown city-owned surface parking lots. And 3. Designate the use of surplus parking district revenue for downtown affordable housing development projects, alternative transportation programs for downtown workers, and other non-parking related expenditures. A no vote opposes amending the general plan and downtown plan to 1, do everything I just said. So a no vote basically says no to all of the things I just mentioned. I'm not going to read them again because they're identical to what you just heard. So this has attracted lots of attention, a lot of letters to the editor. So we're just going to start out by asking each of you why you either support or oppose what I just read. And I'll start with Don, and we'll go back and forth. This is less of a debate and more of a discussion, and we look forward to learning more.
Great. Thanks so much, Rachel. I'll start by just saying I think Measure O will be harmful to the community and to downtown, and here's why I think that. One, it stops the moving forward of 124 apartments that will be real, legally bound affordable housing in our downtown. It mandates a smaller, lower quality library. It has poor parking policy because it actually blocks consolidation of parking downtown. It contains 13 pages of city policy that pretty much no one understands clearly, sometimes I think even including the folks who wrote it. And it takes away the ability of the farmers market to decide for itself where it would prefer to be. So those are sort of my top reasons for thinking it's not a good idea.
And Lisa?
Hi, Rachel. Thanks so much for having us. I really appreciate the opportunity to discuss it. It's complicated, and I think that that's why there's been a lot of back and forth and a lot of confusion for a lot of people too. And I will try to sort of summarize similarly to Don's just now, where I have been following the issues around this for some years now pretty closely. I have been in many meetings, including the DLAC meetings years ago, where the vast majority of the people present were not only expressing their concerns about taking Measure S money that they had voted for, moving the library to a parking garage and destroying the one that has been in its historical location for about 100 years. I've been in those meetings and I have seen and heard the vast majority of the people with all kinds of concerns and worries that have been really, some of them have been taken on. I do agree with that. But that's actually why we end up here in this position now with Measure O on the ballot, is that for years of the public trying to engage with the city government and get their concerns across and get even other ideas across, that was mostly tried to be swept under the rug. So for me, it has meant a lot of work over the years coming to this point of having this ballot measure. And so I would say that the proposed mixed-use project on Lot 4 would be dangerous instead to our community and to the
why
future.
Why dangerous?
Well, I would say for a variety of reasons, but two of them are with respect to fiscal responsibility and environmental responsibility. There are many questions that come up every time about this project and where the money is for it, where the money is going to come from, what kind of debt we are going to be saddled with. It's also that model is a long-standing, very 20th century model for cities that has really been discredited. There's a wonderful group called Strong Towns that I really recommend people look into about going with different models for how we get things done in our cities, how we make improvements in our cities that don't involve putting us in decades worth of debt. So that's one thing. And then there's the environmental responsibility.
I want to get to each of these, but I
Yeah.
think I want to take them apart and back up a little.
Sure.
Because we have the whole hour, unless I have another coughing fit. Cough drop, please. Water, please, Mr. Program Director. Thank you. So you mentioned fiscal issues. So I want to talk about that, but I also want to just clarify. So if I understand this right from the ballot measure, it means that the library would be destroyed and then rebuilt on its same site. Is that what the proposal says?
No.
It just says don't do this other thing. It doesn't say what you want to happen. It just says you don't want that. Am I summarizing it well?
That's fair. I'd say a little close, more accurate would be to say that we don't want the library to be moved. We don't want the current library to be destroyed, that we feel that it can be very successfully renovated. And another thing I'll point out about the renovation is that we've been hearing from the city a lot these comparisons between this new building that they propose and the renovation design, and how the renovation design is inferior, smaller, etc. I also want to point out something that is pretty much never mentioned, which is that renovation design that is being referred to was very strictly done to a budget of $27 million. We are now looking at a budget for a library that is topping $42 million. So I just want to say, first of all, where's the money for that? Second of all, if we have extra money for a library, we can do something spectacular with a renovation.
Okay, Dawn, I'm going to let you take a whack at a couple things that were said because there were a lot. So let's just talk about the fiscal worries of this measure, saying that we are against the mixed use because we think it's going to put the city in debt, especially because there aren't attached funds already. Is that characterizing what you said, Lisa?
Yeah.
Well, there were several fiscal parts even, and I'll try pieces. One is what Lisa said is absolutely incorrect about the two designs versus the current renovation proposal and the current new library proposal. Both are $42 million proposals. The architect has produced this report recently. I am going to read exactly what the architect said about his he did both designs, and he said a renovation of the old library would provide modest improvements to the sustainability of the existing building, including cone-compliant windows, lighting, and insulation. However, no significant green achievements are possible due to budgetary limitations and building constraints. The new library, on the other hand, provides significant and ambitious sustainability features. First and foremost, the new library will be all-electric, zero-net energy building. This means there will be no gas serving in the building, and rooftop solar panels will generate an amount of power equivalent to the power consumption over the course of the entire year. The green roof will provide native habitat for birds, insects, and reduce the urban heat island effects. So I say this because I'll tell, Lisa will, I know disagree, but I have been following this week in and week out, and the most current architect's comments are comparing two different $42 million versions of the library. It's not like one was cheaper than the other. They are exactly the same, and the library that Lisa favors, the one at the current site, would be 25% smaller than the new library would be, and it would be significantly smaller than what we have even right now.
Are there drawings people could look at to help them?
Absolutely. They're right on the city website. There's a city website completely devoted to this whole project, and you can see the side-by-side budget comparisons of these two versions, both at $42 million. So that's really important to recognize. And beyond that, just to talk about the fiscal responsibility in general, we talked about new towns, and one of the things that really good new urbanism says is you do mixed-use projects. You consolidate your limited available land to do as many different uses as you can. Right now, we have a flat parking lot in this certain place. We could have a big new library, a whole bunch of housing, and some replacement parking on that same land. And when you do that, not only is it efficient that way, when you build one building with three uses, the cost of building goes way down for each part of the project because they share some of the infrastructure costs. Things like building the foundation, which are very expensive. So actually, the same architect has also pointed out that by doing a new library in the new location, you get a whole bunch more library for the same amount of money.
Lisa, back to you. And I want to ask, because I've been in the library that's in Watsonville. It's big, airy, beautiful thing. There is a parking garage, but it's not above it. It's next to it. Does that make you feel less or more confident about this new project?
Am I on? Okay. It does not make me feel more confident about this project. And I also want to clarify regarding what Don just was referring to. It's right. The same architect worked on both of these designs, the renovation design, which they submitted that report a couple of years ago, and then the more recent one that they're working on now for the new library. And in their report for the renovation, in the very opening summary, they talk about how the design and considerations for that particular renovation design were all about keeping to a budget of $27 million. Now, it may be that some people are saying, oh, due to inflation of a couple of years, et cetera, that $27 million budget now looks like 42. I'm skeptical about that. Another thing I want to mention is that with respect to modern architectural thinking, one of the most important things going on right now is that, for example, Bob Berkebile, who is one of the main framers of the LEED standards, which have been very important in trying to address environmental issues, he has been saying for at least 10 years now, I believe, that those standards are far far from being enough. And in fact, he is leading, among many other architects, a movement about reuse that is focused on reuse. And he says, you'd better have a damn compelling reason for building a new building in these times with the severity of the climate issues that we are looking at. Because another thing, expense-wise, that hasn't been brought up is that to not only are we talking about expenses of building, we're also talking about expenses of demolition. And the expense of demolition, both fiscally and environmentally, is considerable, and it's not being factored in.
May I say something about demolition?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because isn't there asbestos involved either way? You have to abate that.
Yes.
Right.
But what's interesting is what Lisa's implication is that there aren't any compelling reasons to do a new building here. And I think I will explain, as I partially have already, why the new library would be so vastly superior. And it goes right at her point, which is you want to do a building that is more environmentally responsive. And the architect has specifically said that keeping the old one will be much less environmentally responsible. But let's talk about that demolition. I don't think most people know that the renovation plan would require the demolition of a very substantial part of the library anyway, because the part that's sort of the one-story part on the whole perimeter is shot and would have to be torn down. So, this is a reason not only to not confuse our demolition language here, but it's also a reminder that it's not really going to be very well reused, because so much of that building is going to be torn down because it is really crappy, period.
And
wow.
What was your
Wow. It's I keep hearing about how this is an incredibly old building. It's, somewhere between 50 and 60 years old. And I have another, also Bob Berkebile and other architects, including my brother, have recently been saying the most environmentally responsive and responsible building now is a renovated one. And that is a serious concern in architecture and in building now.
But why would you refer to an architect who has no knowledge of this situation and compare and ignore the architect who we have here, who's done 2 different designs and who addresses the environmental issues and still favors the new library? It's great to point to experts somewhere else. Abe Jason his specialty is library design. Mm-hmm. That's what he does. And he doesn't make any money one way or the other picking one over the other, because he has the job either way. And he has specifically said, environmentally, the new library is vastly superior. I don't know, just because someone else far away doesn't have any basis for judging what is appropriate in this situation without coming to look and say, based on what you're saying, we would never tear down a building, no matter what, because it's just bad environment. But that's not true. There are buildings that need to be replaced because they are no longer functional and cannot be put back to a very environmentally sustainable way.
If you just joined us, this is Talk of the Bay, a heated conversation about Measure O, which would determine the fate of the downtown library, among other things, and Lot 4, which is where the current farmers market on Wednesdays is currently happening. And we'll get to the farmers market issue in just a moment, but I did want to invite and take a brief moment to remind you that we are in our pledge drive, and we have a couple people to thank. And also, so we're going to come right back to Lisa Ekstrom and Don Lane, giving them a moment to take a breath and think about what they want to say next. And we'll be going to go for the whole hour. If you'd like to join us by text and ask a question or make a comment, you're welcome to do that by texting 831-900-5773. But if you want to make a pledge, you can call that number. We are in a match period right now, and Guy Lanier will match your donation dollar for dollar. This is a particularly special pledge drive because we are raising money not only to cover our operating expenses and allow us to bring programs just like this to you day in and day out. But we are also raising funds to go on the air on 2 separate new frequencies. So we are repurposing those. We don't have to tear them down. We're just simply buying them from a Christian broadcaster, and we're going to turn them into a local radio station, K-Squid. We're going to take over the dial in 2 more places. And the reason we're doing that is because people have mentioned that they can't always get us when they're driving through Watsonville, and especially not in Monterey and Pacific Grove and Carmel. So those of you kind of listening in the south part of our listening area like Monterey, but you're listening anyway, this is for you and for all of us when we are traveling throughout the listening area. If you want to make an extra donation, Guy will also match that. But you need to call or get on the line. We have Amy Chen Mills with us here to talk about our pledge drive. Amy?
Yeah. Well, this is our fall pledge drive for KSQD, 90.7 on your FM dial, and hopefully soon to be expanding into other locations on your FM dial, which I think is really exciting because folks often press that scan button to try to get to the next radio station, and that KSQD could possibly show up on 3 different stops on your scan. And people who don't know about KSQD, but who really would enjoy KSQD and the programs that are offered here, including incredible local news coverage and issue coverage like what we're listening to today at Talk of the Bay, can hear and join into our community, which is, I think, a wonderful thing to hear right now. The 2 people who are in the studio talking about Measure O in such depth, I think, is something that's we don't get in print publications or even online publications. In the news, we get maybe a couple quotes from someone. It's almost like a printed soundbite. But here on KSQD, you get the whole full conversation. And I'm really appreciating listening to this. I have an opinion about this particular issue, but I've always got an open mind. Like, I want to hear more. I want to make sure that my opinion is correct or based on the right information, and I'm willing to change my mind. And so this is where we get to listen in and figure out what we really think. KSQD 90.7 FM. So if you can donate, please do. And right now is a good time to donate. You can just call in at 831-900-5773 or go to the website at ksqd.org, and there's a big fat donate button there, and you can just click on that donate button and donate from the privacy and quiet of your own home to support programs like this that I know Rachel Goodman has worked so hard to pull together. Rachel, you're one of the hardest working people I know, actually. And then here she is volunteering her time for the community's benefit. So I think if we're benefiting as a community, let's support this radio station, KSQD. So call in if you can in this hour. That'll make us happy, and we will thank you on the air.
Thank you, Amy. And I do want to thank Guy Lanier, who's putting forward a challenge grant. Right now, we'll match your donation dollar for dollar up to $500. So we'd love to actually get a $500 pledge, but any amount is very welcome. And again, we want to thank Karen, who loves the Zombie Jamboree and Giant Steps, and Denise Jacobson loves the Dream Journal, Tom Hartman, WAW, I have to think of what that might stand for, and the Kitchen Sisters. And what is that, Worldwide Wrestling? I'm not sure. World Awareness Week. Okay, there we go. We're looking for world squid domination here by expanding into 2 more places on the dial. You can help us right now by making a contribution. And we'll go back to the program now with the confidence that while you're listening, you're going, wow, I didn't get to hear this perspective anywhere else, and I'm hearing it here on K-Squid. So one way you can thank us is to keep us on the air. And ksqd.org is the best place to do that. And now I'd like to reintroduce our 2 guests who are speaking on both sides of the Measure O issue. It's Lisa Ekstrom for the pro side and Don Lane in the ring on the other side. Nobody's got boxing gloves. They're being very nice. It's all very friendly, but it is, people feel passionately about downtown, and they've been debating it ever since I've been around. I remember downtown being a very sleepy place in the 80s, and they'd roll up the sidewalks and everything. They'd close at 8 o'clock, and there was hardly any nightlife. anyway do you want to go to anyway? And then, sorry, Asti, I love you.
It's all true.
The board, the jury room, I love you. But anyway, so here we are after the earthquake, and the downtown is thriving, and there's all this activity and nightlife. And now there's this fierce debate on what do we want it to be in the future. And I think this is part of that context. So that's why people aren't just thinking about books and where to put them. This is way bigger than that. It's about the character, I think, of the downtown, and how do we deal with the fact that no one can afford to live here who works here. So I want to get to the affordable housing part in just a moment. So we've got books, libraries, which are thriving, vibrant local places. We have affordable housing mixed into this mixed use, and then we have a garage. Anything else I missed, Don?
Oh, there's lots.
There are other
multi-use. I mean, I want to just reckon. I was just in Ireland, and there was a bar that also was a hardware store. So it's not without precedent.
There's some mixed use.
You get your screwdriver and your screwdriver.
Yeah, very good.
Mixing and mixed use.
Yes, there you go. So, help me out. Where were we before we took the break? You were talking.
I think Lisa's turn
about tearing things down and whether it was good environmental practice or not. But I do want to get to other issues. So if we could talk about the farmers market. So a lot of people are used to going to the farmers market on Wednesdays. We just heard news that they had signed a memorandum of understanding with the city saying that they were going to get a permanent spot at another site. So does that change, Lisa, the whole equation now that they were kind of being discussed as if it was going to displace them, but it sounds like they want to be displaced into this other place. Is that what you read as much as I read?
Can I just very quickly wrap up a previous point about the library and the renovation? I just want to say before going on to the farmers market that I think that as well as taking on the opinion of Jason Architecture, who has done both the renovation and the new design, and their opinion, I also think that taking special heed of the architects who were behind putting together the LEED standards is really worth our attention. And when they say we have to really rethink what we will consider building a new building for, I think we need to pay attention. It's all about the severity of the climate crisis. So, having said that, I'll go on to the farmers market and say that I had heard that they were about to sign the MOU, or that it's imminent. And I feel like the whole time that I've been involved in this, I would never, ever presume to speak for the farmers market. I love the farmers market. It means a lot to me. I was away from Santa Cruz for some time, and when I came back, it was where I saw all my friends again. It's an important part of my week, an important part of many people's weeks. I met a woman, I think right pre-pandemic, who was talking about how she comes to our farmers market from, I think it was Mountain View. She tries to come like once a month because she says it's the best one. So hands down, I'm completely supportive of our farmers market. I feel like at the same time, the city government is their landlord, and they have always been in a delicate position of, they've had impermanence. I think that they've had the understanding for a long time now that they probably couldn't stay on Lot 4, that the city had designs for Lot 4. So I think that's in the picture. On the other hand, I think that anyone who has gone to that farmers market and that location where it has begun and where it has grown and where it has become something so special recognizes that the place is actually important. And that's another part of, important urban thinking these days, is that you don't just impose design. You observe where people go, where things are happening. You work with that. And that is precisely what we're trying to do. I think that the farmers market, because the city government is their landlord, is going to do whatever they can to have something permanent.
I've been to other towns like Davis that have a beautiful downtown permanent market. Don, do you want to respond to the farmers market issue? Does it make it a foregone conclusion to talk about it at all since they've already got an arrangement?
I don't think it's finalized, but it's certainly moving in that direction. But I do think it's interesting what Lisa said. I know she personally doesn't want to speak for the farmers market, but the reality is that Measure O, one of its flaws from my perspective, is that's exactly what it does. It says farmers market people, meaning the people who run the farmers market and who manage it and operate it, we're going to tell you where you're going to be with Measure O. You might want to be somewhere else, but Measure O actually says you have to stay on this lot. There's no other option. That is exactly what Measure O says. And that's kind of weird, frankly, because in light of Lisa's proper attitude that she wants to really support the market, why wouldn't you say, market, if you want to move to a different spot that you think is going to work better for you, go for it. But that's not, Measure O doesn't let that happen. And that's really not, if you think about, self-determination can be exaggerated, but if you want the market to have its self-determination, you don't put a ballot measure on to say, we're going to override the market and tell it to be somewhere else. And then quick other thing, which is the market has been in other places before, and location does matter because it needs to be downtown, but the market knows where it wants to be, and it says there are some different locations downtown that will work really well. They will be good places for us to be. And I feel like I just don't get it. Like why we've got this whole campaign around saving the farmers market. That's really how this began in a signature gathering mode. Save the farmers market. Well, it turns out the farmers market did not need to be saved with Measure O.
Okay, I did want to bring in a couple of people. They are not saying who they are because I only see their phone number, so that's okay. But I did mention I would include some text. So this one says, Don Lane, the reason the one-story sections would be removed is because of the realignment of the entry to face City Hall per Knoll and Tam, previous library consultants. I'm afraid that sounds like gibberish to me because I'm not enough informed on what this person is talking about. So we were talking about if they renovated the existing library, they'd have to rip out the bottom story, is what you said. So can you illuminate what this person means by that?
Well, I think they are correct that there is a recommendation that if the library is renovated, that it ought to face to City Hall. That's fine. I'm not disagreeing with that. But they are incorrect about the reason the renovation would require the removal of that one-story portion. It is shot.
Okay, and I have another question that just came in. And again, you can text us questions. I'm here with Don Lane and Lisa Ekstrom on both sides of the Measure O campaign. This is Talk of the Bay on K-Squid, KSQD. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. The text number is 831-900-5773. And when you're done texting, why not call that and make a pledge of support while you're at it? This person says, would we not already have a beautifully renovated library if special interest in the city had not been intent on utilizing Measure S funds to subsidize a parking structure? I don't know who to direct that to.
Well, I'm happy to respond. See, this is the, Rachel, I'm going to make a bold and harsh statement here. This is my job in this campaign, is to chase down week after week statements like that are just wrong. And I have to spend a lot of time doing that. And when someone says, as that person did, we're going to use the Measure S funds to build the parking, that's just wrong. It's illegal. It's not what Measure S funds can be used for. And yet somehow this got started being said, and now it's got traction in the community. And I know I'm a little worked up here when I say this, but, that's hard to deal with. Like, if a campaign is relying on kind of the repetition of false information, it's really damaging.
Can I get you to describe what Measure S funds are? Because I think not everybody is familiar.
Sure. Measure S funds, there was in 2016, the voters approved countywide a bond measure, borrowing money that taxpayers would repay to repair, rebuild, fix up, make better our libraries, all the libraries in Santa Cruz County. And these funds are only allowed to be used for the libraries.
And we have seen several libraries get rebuilt or are in the process of being rebuilt. So it's been happening, except during COVID, it kind of slowed down. But we've been seeing that. So there's action happening. But this particular project is kind of special. That's what we're talking about today, which is the main library. So, Lisa, I want to give you a chance to respond to what he said, which is that is incorrect, what is being put out there.
Well, I do have to agree that because of the complexity and changing nature of this whole project and saga, there has been considerable confusion that I encounter all the time. And so as someone who has been working towards this for more than 4 years now, I frequently find myself in situations where I'm trying to correct or explain to someone. It is true that some people are confused about Measure S funds being used for a parking garage. That was never the case, and that is not something that Measure O and the campaign has ever claimed. There may be some people who are supportive who have said something like that, but we do not make that claim. What we do say is that once Measure S funds were approved by the voters by a wide margin, there was a lot of support for it. Right at that time, the city started working on drawing up plans for, they wanted a parking garage on that lot for at least 10 years previous, I believe, from what I've heard. And so thought, hey, let's put this together. Let's take these Measure S funds for the library, and we will have that help us accomplish our parking garage at the same time. Not that the funds would be used for the parking garage, but that is true. That the opportunity of the Measure S funds at that time were combined by people in the city government with a plan to try to build a new parking garage when we already have 4 within a few blocks downtown.
So we have another comment from a listener. It is simply not true that the existing library building is, quote, crappy. It is, in fact, structurally sound. By the way, I go to the downtown library every day, and here's what I observe. People looking at their phones, people staring at a computer, and only a few of us old schoolers perusing the stacks. As such, the current library is more than adequate for our sleepy little town. I don't mean to laugh because there's some truth in all of that, but I don't know if it means we should, give up on books.
Well,
I agree.
Can I, that is
I don't think they meant that.
No,
and see, this is, I feel like this is exactly why we have to have conversations like this, because of the reminder of how different people view libraries and the world in general.
Yeah.
But really, I've been spending a tremendous amount of time with librarians lately because of this campaign. And they are just, they will tell you the reason that person experiences the sleepy little library with a few people on their phones and not a lot of book looking is that it's not a very good facility, but more importantly, it was built for a different time, and people use libraries very differently now when you have a really beautiful, new, good library with a lot of community space, a lot of different technology, different kinds of meeting rooms, and that's what we'll get with a new library, and then we'll have a lot more people using it. And that's the problem, is we don't have a library that's very attractive to people right now. And I want to acknowledge that even if we only renovate it, which is not what I favor, it will be better than what we have now. So I'm not trying to say that.
We have agreement.
Ding, 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 ding.
High five.
They both want to renovate.
I just feel like, a little better is not what I shoot for. We're going to spend a ton of money. Let's get really good library, not just okay library.
Thank you. I want to move to one more short comment, then I have some other things we haven't talked about, like
our housing.
The garage and housing. Those are big, right? So let's not leave them to the last minute because we have another break coming. So,
I just want to say that, yes, we agree about a renovation would be an improvement. And I also want to reiterate that the the renovation that Jason Architecture presented to the city was a renovation under the tight budget of $27 million, and that if we had the kind of extra money, or even some of it that we're talking about for this new library, the magic of renovation is you actually take something that exists and you repurpose it. You take something that was built in one way for one purpose or one set of purposes, and you bring it into what your current needs are, what your current uses are. That is what a real renovation would accomplish.
Why are so many librarians against it, or is that really
There's a lot of
the
librarians
case?
for it as well.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I just want to add that.
Can we move over to the garage, then over to the affordable housing? 'Cause,
Sure.
well,
we should keep moving.
I want to
agree.
start with affordable housing
Okay.
because for most people, they don't go, oh my gosh, I can't park, but they really go, oh gosh, I can't pay my rent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's more elemental than I can't park downtown. So let's start there. No one would argue that we don't need affordable housing. We're in agreement, ding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ding, ding, ding.
It's just, how did this project get wrapped up with that, and what will it, let's say, remind people that yes on O means not doing this multi-use thing. So yes on O does say put money toward affordable housing, but it doesn't specify units, and so it's more vague. So could
Can
both
I
of you
add to
talk
that?
about affordable housing in these two scenarios, 1 and 2? Lisa's
Sure, go ahead, Lisa.
for it, and then Dawn has other ideas. So go ahead.
A very important thing that Measure O does with respect to affordable housing, and was really a key point for us, is that one of the most difficult things about actually coming up with affordable housing, finding the funding, one of the most difficult parts is finding the lots, finding the land. And an important piece of Measure O specifies city-owned lots that would be dedicated to affordable housing above the ground floor. So that would be written into the city's plan, that those lots that are already existing, that the city already owns, would be available. And that accomplishes something enormous right there in terms of moving along, getting us to a place where we can actually have affordable housing. On the other hand, with this mixed-use project, one of the things that is really concerning about it for me and for many people is that the affordable housing in this project is literally built on top of the parking garage. The parking garage is something that does not have funding, and actually its possibilities for having that funding are they're not real obvious right now or easy to see. So we have a situation there where you have affordable housing that is literally waiting for another parking garage downtown before it can happen. So we are talking about city-owned lots that exist that we can get going on affordable housing. Basically, as soon as Measure O passes, we get the city government behind that and get it moving.
Dawn?
Yeah, this is a hard one for me not to just jump over. And I know I've been, I am being argumentative. We're having a disagreement here,
That's
and
okay.
I apologize for my argumentativeness. But I want to I just want to point out that the project that Measure O is going to stop is exactly what Lisa said we want to do. It's building affordable housing on a parking lot that the city owns. That's the whole point.
And that can be part of it, too.
And so, I mean, they're going to stop building housing on a city parking lot so that they can build city housing on a parking lot. I mean, it just doesn't. That doesn't add up.
Was that put in there to get people to vote for it? Because it seems like, if you just wanted the library to stay where it was, it could have been a simple proposition to keep the library. But the affordable housing seems to have been put in there to keep people who want affordable housing on board, but because you guys had it. I mean, is it gotten more
Yeah, well,
complicated?
let me say something about that. There's two parts of that are really important. One is that it is real affordable housing that will be built. And it has a lot of pieces in place, none of which exist for the imagined things that Lisa is talking about. But more important, think about the process we've been talking about that Lisa has really kind of minimized as not really being a good community process. Well, how did that housing get there? It wasn't in the original project.
That's
this
right.
is something we do agree on. How did it get there? People like me, and I'm not taking credit for this, people like me, not me, and a lot of people who are advocates for affordable housing said, wait a minute, we don't need that much parking. Parking, we maybe need a little. What we really need is housing. And we hammered at the city council, and oh my God, they listened. They changed the project. Wait, if there was no good process, how did that happen? It happened because the city council, including Justin Cummings and Sandy Brown, who were very skeptical of the project, actually voted to recommend this project move forward in the downtown library subcommittee, because they said, well, we've changed it now and it got a lot better, and now we're going to recommend it to the city council. So
can I ask a question
housing
that
is
was raised?
Huge change in this, and it's
so you're advocating and you got it. But
I agree.
What I don't understand is a statement Lisa made, and maybe both of you can clarify. And I also want to just make sure we don't run out of time to do the other essential, which is remind people we're in a pledge drive. Very important, without which we could not do this show. But I do want to mention that you said that the affordable housing couldn't happen because the garage would hold it up. What did you mean by that? And do you agree that this is going to be a slowdowner, this garage?
Lisa can explain.
Is that what you said?
Yeah. Okay, there's quite a few things you just said that I could respond to, and I doubt we'll even have the time. I was one of those people who has been showing up at city council meetings and writing letters to the city council and pointing out the crucial affordable housing that needs to have happened. And I will also say that in the process of this project that the city put in motion many years ago, the affordable housing is really a very late comer. You're right. It came because of a lot of concern and a lot of voices. But here's the thing. We still... Basically, we're seeing a situation where this parking garage being the initial idea was a parking garage on the entire lot. That was the initial plan.
So would you agree it's a lot better than...
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But,
another ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Right.
But I will also say that... in terms of affordable housing and prioritizing affordable housing, we weren't talking some years ago about, we've got Lot 4. Let's put some affordable housing on there, shall we? Measure O actually includes that in our measure. And it's actually the affordable housing part of Measure O is really very much at the heart of the measure. It's not remotely something that is peripheral. I feel like with this mixed-use project, I feel like the affordable housing was really put on like, the cherry on top, trying to sell a project that was just being unpopular. From the very first DLAC meeting that happened years ago.
What is DLAC?
The DLAC is the Downtown Library Advisory Committee.
Thank you.
From the very first one, the vast majority of voices and people who attended and listened about what was being planned said, we are against this plan. That was years ago. If the city had actually listened back then and, for example, prioritized affordable housing then, we could possibly be looking at a renovated library right now. We could possibly be looking at some affordable housing going in on Lot 4 right now, in addition to these other lots that we have put in to Measure O.
So what you're saying is that there's been a lot of back and forth and that people haven't felt listened to, so that's why they created this
Exactly.
initiative. They didn't feel heard. We have just a few more minutes. We did have a question that came in, and they added is there any assurance that the housing will go to local people in either of these proposals? Which I think is a fair question to ask of voters.
I think that is a good question, and I believe it came up at maybe one of the last city council meetings too, I think. So obviously it's a concern. I don't know legally what we have to work with on that, but obviously it's something that's on people's minds, and so I think that's something that the city needs to look at and consider.
There are tools which will be utilized in this project and pretty much every affordable housing project in Santa Cruz to do a local preference. They cannot have an absolute mandate, but they can have a local preference. So that will happen in this case. I just want to have one last swing on the affordable housing thing. It is, I genuinely believe Lisa and others care about affordable housing. I want to really be clear. But I also want to be clear that there are, in our work, 8 local organizations that just focus primarily on affordable housing issues in our community. 8. All 8 of them say no on O because they recognize that the Measure O vision of affordable housing is not strong, and that this project is real, and that you don't want to kill a real project that's really affordable.
Can I ask a question that may sound like it's off topic, but I really don't think it is, because I feel like I have a sense of how people feel about our downtown, that this may be about more than the library. It's about the high-rises that are going up at different places around our community, and that there seems to be a sudden surge in outsized buildings going up without a lot of thrilled people looking at them. And there's a lot of reasons why that's happening, but do you think that this debate that you're having is in the context of people feeling very uneasy about the rapid pace of the look of the downtown in general?
I think that that's true.
Hey, they'd agree.
Yeah, we agree again, Dawn. Yay.
And you came to different conclusions about what the solution is, but I think it's caught up in the same feeling of, if people don't like those hotels, this is going to do nothing about those if they vote for it, right? Just be aware of what you're voting for. You're not voting to tear down those giant buildings they're just building right now, nor are you voting for future ones to not be so tall. So just be aware that this is only about this one project.
Site. Well,
it's not just about the one site,
but it is a lot about.
There's only 3 there are 3 or 4 puzzle pieces as opposed to these other big hotel projects and other things that are happening.
It's also about looking at the future and the vision of our downtown and where we're going to be living, what our children will have to live in if they're lucky enough to actually be able to live downtown. My kids can't live here. And the only reason I can live here is because I'm currently living with my mom. So, the affordable housing thing is very real to me, and it's very real to most people I know. Yeah. I would say that is part of why the affordable housing issue is really at the heart of Measure O.
Yeah. Any final words would you like to close, each of you, on more, how you want people to vote and why, because we have a few more minutes and then we're going to go to break and ask people to support the station that brings you debates just like this. So for everyone who texted us, we'd love to hear from you. You can use the same number you texted to make a phone call of support right now at 900-5773, and we'll tell you more about that in a minute. We have a matching grant in effect. So let's see who got to go first last time. I should know this because I'm the host.
At the very beginning, I was first. So
okay,
whatever that's.
So you can be first again, and you can have the ending.
The last word.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Great.
I would like to take this opportunity partly to let people know that there is a showing tonight at the Resource Center for Nonviolence of the film Citizen Jane, which is a documentary about Jane Jacobs, someone that I was aware of growing up and who's very inspiring to me. And it's a documentary about her battle with the powers that be, and with in particular developers in New York City, and it was successful. And so I'd recommend anybody who's interested come on down tonight at 7 at the Resource Center for Nonviolence. And I would say that is really key for me in why I am here, putting together Measure O, fighting for Measure O, talking to people about Measure O. I've had an incredible experience talking to so many people in our community over the last few years about this stuff, and it's been incredibly valuable to me. And I feel like I've gotten to know our community so much better. So I just want to thank you again, Rachel, for the opportunity, and also say to everybody, pledge for K-Squid. Do it now.
We agree on that one, too.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We all agree.
All right.
And vote yes on O.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa Ekstrom, for the Yes on O campaign, and Don Lane.
Thanks. I think I'm glad you brought up this sort of bigger question about, like, where are we going? Because, I think there's sort of this idea that how we want the community to look is the biggest question here. But I'm going to disagree with that. I want to think about who gets to live here and what we're really doing about when we keep things the same, we stay on the same trajectory of becoming a more exclusive community, a less diverse community. And when we make change that is geared toward housing more people who don't have a lot of money and create public facilities like libraries that really particularly serve lower income people, that's a good thing. And I just want to remind everyone that this particular project that we're fighting about, there's no for-profit entity here. There's a parking structure, which the city just breaks even on. There's a library, which we all know, and low-income housing. I mean, why are we talking about big money in this when it's about public goods?
Don Lane, thank you so much for being here, and thanks to Lisa Ekstrom. Thank you for making the time.
Rachel.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
I hope the voters found this useful and interesting, and our listeners appreciate all of our election coverage. We will be having a debate between Justin Cummings and Sheba Kalantari Johnson, and then later Gail Pellerin and Liz Lawler will square off in these very studios a couple weeks after that. So we're here because you want to know what's going on, and with all the information you have, sometimes you don't get the in-depth discussion like we present. So thank you for those folks who are on the phone now. You can go online instead at ksqd.org and make a wonderful pledge of support. And Guy Lanier, who gets up really early in the morning to host the morning shows, as a volunteer, has put up his money up to $500. He will match your donation dollar for dollar. So generous Guy will be there for you if you are there for us. And that's the equation we look for. Because you're listening, because you appreciate what we do, this is the action part of that equation is I love it, I'm listening, and I'm going to support you. So that third step is the most magic part of the equation, because without our listener support, we would not be here at all. And this is a particularly exciting time to be here. I believe Amy Chen Mills may still be with us.
I am still here. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah.
And because you are listening right now, we know you value these programs that KSQD provides. There's a direct connection between the programs you love and our ability to keep bringing them to you. So won't you make a donation now to ensure this program will be there for you tomorrow and next year? It's quick and easy, and it takes just a few moments. You can pledge online at ksqd.org. There's a giant donate button that makes it very easy. Or call us, and we will talk to you at 831-900-5773. That's 831-900-5773. Let's say you listen once a day to Democracy Now! Or Tom Hartman or this show, Talk of the Bay, which brings you this incredible in-depth local programming. These shows take an alternative approach to the news, even the local news media, which does not go into this great depth with people like Don Lane and Lisa Ekstrom on the pro and the no on the O campaigns. And these shows are 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. And so we're asking you, is that worth, let's say, $1 a day? That would add up to $260 a year. We have interviewed over 1,000 local leaders on our talk shows this year, and I'm wondering if you can even put a value on what that brings to the Santa Cruz County community for all of us. So think about helping us out. Now is the time. It's our fall pledge drive, and it'll be over in 3 days, I believe. Rachel, is that right? When is it over totally? On Saturday?
Saturday night. So we're going to try to get as many people on board as we can. We've got 190 people